What's up, Mets'd listeners? Back here for episode number 70 of the Mets'd podcast. Of course, I'm your co-host, Draftneck Mark Luino here with James Shiano. Jeter had no range, talking about everything New York Mets baseball. And while we did tease last episode, today we're going to be talking about Once Upon a Time in Queens. We actually do have some Mets things to talk about here that are currently happening and are kind of relevant right now. So we figured we'll push it back another week. Like, what's that really going to do for us? It's going to be a rainy day kind of episode when we got nothing to talk about. Today, though, on this episode, we do have a lot, like I just said. We got a lot of new hirings for the managers and coaches, or coaches, I should say, not managers, coaches for the Mets staff. We got a hitting coach. We got a first base coach, third base coach. We got new guys all around and a lot of good things to say about them. We also got some rumors about free agency. We saw Brandon Nimmo just became a Scott Boras client. So we got a little bit of everything, nothing too particularly important, but if you are a Mets fan, these are all things that I'm sure you want to be keened in on, learn a little bit more, get some insight from us as you always do. You guys know the drill here. Drop us a like on YouTube if you're watching us. Subscribe to the channel as well. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Mets'd. If you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, drop us a 5-star rating. Drop us a review. It really does help us grow, as well as, drop us a little Spotify review in particular because we haven't done, a lot of them yet because it's relatively new. And I think that's the perfect time to bring in James. James, how you doing, man? How's it been? It's been a week.
But good, yeah, it's been a week. We actually had a conversation off there about how long it feels like in between our episodes now because we're not doing them every 3 days. And it does feel long, but there's just, hasn't been that much. And this, I like how you introed this, we have so much to talk about, and we're talking about the first and third base coaches and the hitting coach.
Dude, that's just the minutia we love as, diehard Mets fans. We love talking about things that really shouldn't be very important, but we will give you a full breakdown on Wayne Kirby and Eric Chavez and all these new guys that are going to be a part of this Mets, coaching staff.
And we're going to start that out with the one guy you didn't just mention, Joey Cora, who's going to be the new third base coach for the New York Mets, which he is third base, right? Instead of Kirby?
Yeah, he's third base.
Yeah. Which, if you listened to us last season, you would know our aversion to Gary DiSarcina, the Mets' former third base coach. And we've made this analogy before, but a third base coach should be like a cornerback or like an offensive lineman, where you never want to know his name. If you don't know that guy's name, that means he's doing everything right. If you know your third base coach's name, something is clearly wrong. And something was wrong last year with Gary DiSarcina. So we're hoping Joey Cora, with a wealth of Major League Baseball experience, can come in and maybe right the ship a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be nice. He's Alex Cora's brother, in case you guys couldn't, draw the line between those two there. So he's a part of a baseball family, a former major leaguer as well, which it seems like the Mets are really kind of honing in on with these coaches around the team right now is guys who have been around the game for a while, but maybe aren't, the necessarily prestigious guys or the guys that have, Ron Washington almost I would say. These guys are a little bit on the younger side of the older generation.
I don't know if that's true. Cora and Kirby are both pretty old. These guys were baseball players in the 90s, but Cora is a guy who actually did at one time in his baseball playing career did have some esteem. He was a Vanderbilt Commodore, which anyone who follows college baseball knows that they're one of the premier baseball programs. He was a first-round pick, which is pretty surprising. It's different from the other guy we're going to talk about in a few minutes, Wayne Kirby. Played for 10 years in the majors, similarly to his brother, where he had this kind of long, winding career of being an infielder here, an infielder there. But Joey Cora did make an all-star team, and he actually, for a while, held the Mariners and the American League switch hitters all-time longest hit streak at 24 games.
That's a specific stat.
How funny is that one? But he was in both cases, it was broken within 5 years by an AL switch hitter who I forgot and by Ichiro. So just a little funny one. And he actually was a part of the Mets system. He coached in the minor leagues for the Mets immediately after retiring in the late 90s. And eventually, as a friend of Ozzie Guillen, was brought with Ozzie to the White Sox in 2003 and was on his coaching staff during the World Series.
Okay, yeah, so he's got a little bit of experience around some winning teams, and I know that he's been, with the Marlins and the Pirates. He's just kind of been around baseball ever since he left it as a player.
Yeah, right after Ozzie was fired from the White Sox and hired by the Marlins, he pulled Joey Cora with him to that Marlins job, and then after the Marlins thing flamed out with Ozzie, he went to the Pirates org in 2016. He was the manager of Double-A Altoona for 1 year, and then he's been the third base coach there ever since, so for the last 5 seasons.
Yeah, and again, it's the third base coach. Like you said, you really shouldn't know too much about them, but I think it's nice that he's a baseball lifer. He clearly has some knowledge. There's no way that he'd be kept around all these organizations for all this time without having some sort of value to the team. And while you did say you don't want to know the guy's name, Ron Washington is probably the only third base coach that everyone around baseball knows, and that is for a good reason because he does make players better. So I'm hoping Joey Cora can maybe have some sort of influence in helping this team actually improve, which would be nice.
Definitely. And something that you've talked about a lot, especially last season, was the Mets team lacked edge and the Mets team lacked fire. Joey Cora is a guy who's known around baseball as being a little bit of a firecracker, which is much different than his younger brother Alex, who's always been the even-keeled guy.
Even keel.
Yeah, another funny story about Joey Cora. Joey Cora, a great Wikipedia. I pulled probably the two funniest things from it, so there's no use in you guys going to it, but really thankful for whoever wrote that Wikipedia page because it's really helping out with this content. But Joey Cora, one time, while in the minor leagues, was stabbed while waiting for the team bus.
What?
Twice.
Stabbed?
Twice, in the stomach and the arm.
Wait, stabbed twice?
Twice. There was multiple assailants. Basically, the story goes that he was exchanging words with fans outside the visitors' clubhouse after a game for unknown reasons. And they came back within the hour between them changing and them getting on the bus to go either to the next game, the team hotel, or wherever minor leaguers stayed in the early 90s, late 80s. Came back with two more dudes and assaulted him. Literally assaulted him. Tried to kill him.
That's so crazy.
One guy was
God.
charged.
Yeah, you stabbed somebody.
I mean,
You should be charged.
I don't know.
Crazy.
Crimes in the 80s, you can do anything and people with no idea.
That's insane. He got stabbed. That's a ton of edge. I love that.
He spent 6 weeks on the DL at the time, and he came back that season.
That's something that is just a little chip on his shoulder. Our third base coach has been stabbed twice, and he's survived, and he came back stronger. And
Clint Hurdle's a guy I've talked about a lot on this. At one time, talked about a lot in this podcast, being someone who could be Clint Hurdle-ish, who was on Clint Hurdle's staff for 5 years, is a little helpful. I remember Joey Cora being involved in one of those Pirates fights from the last few years too, right? The Garrett one?
Yeah, I believe he was either trying to break everybody up or he was ready to go. And I'm like, I'm coming at you. I'm Joey Cora. Let's do it.
Well, either way, Joey Cora was in the middle of said fight. So that's big that the Mets are. I don't even know if it's big. It's something that the Mets have added fire now to this coaching staff.
No Dave Joust sitting on the bench trying to stay away.
Maybe Buck brought on Cora to be his muscle, you know what I mean? Because Buck's probably not fighting anymore. Not that Buck was ever much of a fighter, but at least Cora, former major leaguer, I bet he's a little bit bigger than Buck, and he could be his guy, his right-hand man in the ring.
He's in good shape, and he's a guy, too, that had been rumored for, I feel like, the last few years of getting interviews to be, the actual manager of teams, too. So that's also important, I think, to mention as well.
Yeah, he got close one time. It was the Brewers, I think, in 2010 or 2011, but that was before the Brewers' entire organizational overhaul, so you can take that for what it's worth. But he's someone who is respected around the game and who people have tried to have around on more than one occasion. So I think that's meaningful on a coaching staff. And then that other guy that was hired, similarly, Wayne Kirby. This guy is just straight up Buck Showalter's guy. He was on the Rangers staff from 2006 to 2010. So the Rangers actually kept him there after they let Buck go, which was interesting. And then he was the first base coach in Baltimore from 2011 to 2018. So basically, after Buck's first season, Wayne Kirby was with him the entire rest of the way there. And it was funny because Buck talked in his introductory press conference about bringing in his own guys. And he said, I don't bring in buddies. I bring in people that can deliver what needs to be done for the players, which I like him saying that, but Wayne Kirby's like almost certainly one of his buddies.
And honestly, I think it's probably just like that weird, coincidence in that like the guy who he does think is the most perfect fit for the job also happens to be his friend. So it's like that weird, little in between. Yeah,
it's like going out with some of your friends and someone talks to a girl and you go like, this is a great guy. This is one of the best guys I have. Like there's no one better for you than this guy.
A little biased, just a little bit.
For sure. And Kirby, a little different from Cora. He was never this big critically acclaimed baseball player. He came from a small town in Virginia. He just played he was a late round draft pick, 13th round. I feel like I remember. Played parts of 8 seasons with the Indians at the time, the Dodgers. He even played a few games for the Mets in 1998. And he's been on the Padres staff for the last few seasons with Jace Tingler and Ryan Flaherty, who was denied by the Mets. Another fun Wayne Kirby stat is his brother actually was a 3rd-round pick of the NFL draft, Terry Kirby, and played 10 seasons in the NFL as a running back.
That's an incredible career as an NFL player, 10 seasons.
As a running back, no less.
Yeah, no, that's pretty impressive. And what position did Wayne Kirby play? Do you know?
He moved around corner outfield, I believe, and he played some first base at the end. And for these jobs with Baltimore and the Rangers, he was an outfield and first base coach.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I was thinking too, is because Cora, clearly infield guy, Wayne Kirby helped a little bit with the outfield.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Kirby's a first base coach, he's going to coach the first baseman. He's literally standing on first base. I don't want that to be misconstrued. Yeah. He's going to be more of an outfield guy. I think he did some base running too, was one of his titles with the Rangers, I believe.
Okay, yeah. I mean, again, first base, you want to talk about the insignificance of a third base coach. The first base coach could be the most insignificant thing on an entire major league staff.
Yeah, he holds the gloves.
Yes, he holds the gloves and he has the timer for getting the pitchers and the pop times and everything like that.
We're not pretending these are major news pieces, but these are simply news pieces, so we're going to talk about them.
Now, that being said, I do think that the hitting coach is pretty important. and it is pretty integral to a team's success at times. I don't necessarily think it can make a team worse, but I do think it can make a team better. And I think Eric Chávez, who we yanked right away from the Yankees, which that's just fun. I love saying that even though it's like, it's not important, but like, it's great to know that he was hired by the Yankees, just like a month ago even? And
I think it was like early December, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Mets came around and he said, actually, I don't want to work for you guys anymore. I'm going to the Mets, which that doesn't happen. That we'll take our little victories right now, because the little victories, that's how it starts. And soon at the end, we're getting everybody.
It doesn't happen otherwise, but this is now the second time this offseason that Steve Cohen has done this, because we mentioned about a month and a half ago that the Mets did this exact same thing with Dan Schoenfeld, who is now their minor league analytics coordinator, who had just picked up a similar role, I think head of player development with the Royals, like literally 3 weeks before the Mets offered him a job. So it seems like Steve Cohen is very concerned with getting talent into this organization from a coaching standpoint, and he will stop at nothing to get whoever he thinks, and there's no etiquette at play here, which that's fun. I like that. We don't need etiquette. We have the most money in the league.
Yeah, no, fuck that. Let's spend money. It's not me or your money. Who cares? It's Steve Cohen's. He wants to use it how he wants. I'm all in if it makes the team better.
And it's just funny when you take a guy like that away from the Yankees. And people were, like, on the internet, it was fun for a day. People acted like we basically won the World Series by taking, at the time, the Yankees assistant hitting coordinator and making him our head hitting coach. But it's fun. It's fun to get one over on the Yankees after their bad offseason so far.
Of course, too. And it's not like Eric Chávez, while he didn't have that major role with the Yankees and he's going to be our hitting coach, he did get that upgrade. It's for good reason. Like, this guy was a very, very good player back in the day when he was playing in the early 2000s. I mean, he played 15 years, I think, with the A's or something like that. He was around baseball
17 mostly for the A's. Shockingly, he never made an all-star team.
Really?
Yeah, I peeked his Baseball Reference before, and he never made an all-star team. He got MVP votes in 5 consecutive seasons and won Gold Gloves in each of those years as well. And he never was an all-star.
Yeah, because I was going to say, he was great in Oakland. He was getting on base. He played a great third base. He was great defensively
Fantastic.
as well. Like, he was an all-around really, really good player for those A's teams.
And he's the kind of guy who I think his skill set gets lost in the time, because he had his peak during kind of the height of the steroid era from 2000 to 2007, when you weren't really looking at guys if they weren't hitting 35, 40, 45 home runs. And Chavez was a guy who hit 25 homers, 270, 280 average, drove the runners in near 400 on base, and he played great defense. That's the kind of guy who's probably even more valuable today. But I think the phrase you were looking for before about Chavez was that he was very sought after. It seems like a lot of different organizations were looking to bring Eric Chavez into the fold. And he had massive connections to both of these front office, being the Mets and the Yankees, because he was a special assistant under Cashman in 2015, right after he ended his career with that really weird bad year for the Yankees. And then the year after that, when Epler left for Anaheim from that same staff with Cashman, he took Chavez with him. And he was a special assistant under Epler 2016, 2017. And then Epler appointed him to be the manager of the Salt Lake Bees in 2018, a team that you have some closeness to.
Yeah, no, I know a couple guys that were on those teams that played under Eric Chavez. I think he was the interim manager at the time when they were there. And they had all great things to say that, he's a player's coach. He knows a lot about the game. He's very easy to talk to. He's very good at explaining or teaching you what is to be done or how to get this game, how to play it the right way. Like, he's very much hands-on, and he's very easy to interact with the players. And hearing from these guys who are also a part of this organization, that was something that the Angels struggled with at the time, was having coaches and guys on the staff that were relatable and understood how the game was being played in the modern day. And it seems like Eric Chavez is trying to be ahead of that curve and not only just be a player manager or be a player coach, but also make sure that he's getting the most out of his players and helping them improve so that they can get to the next level that they want to be at, which I think that's huge.
That is huge. And it's also important that he played in this modern era of baseball while still being a guy who is esteemed and is respected. Similarly to how a lot of these quality control coaches and a lot of these bench coaches who come through the league now and how they immediately have respect of players. Like, you think about Brian Schneider with the Mets, or Rocco Baldelli with the Twins, Craig Counsell, these guys who played in that era, who were able to see the beginning of how statistics and analytics could improve the game, and now how they're able to take their experience playing then and apply it now with the analytics background into coaching is incredibly important. And we've seen these guys be successful in many places. But I thought one interesting thing about Chavez was that after that 2018 season, he stepped away from any defined roles with teams. And now it seemed like he almost announced that he wanted to come back. And then a lot of teams were vying for his services.
Yeah, no, he's a smart guy. I mean, even you were talking about, playing in the modern age of baseball. He was on the Oakland A's, who were trailblazers for modern baseball in the early 2000s. So he understands what it has to take to be that kind of player. And apparently the dude, I mean, from who I got the information from, he said he truly loves the game of baseball. He loves having fun with it. Like, he is there to enjoy the game and make players better. And that, to me, is exactly what you want out of a hitting coach. He's going to take the information that they give him, and he's going to try to make these players better, and he's going to have fun doing it, which, like, it's a little cliche to say, like, oh, have some fun. Like, it's about winning at the end of the day. But that's something that the Mets definitely struggled with a little bit last year, was being loose and having a little bit of fun, as we could, see with guys like McNeil and Lindor choking each other out in the tunnel. But I think he's going to be a really good addition.
Yes, and just the fact that while he's young, he's going to command respect right away. Like, similarly to how Buck Showalter's going to command respect right away, we're kind of building this, like, nice coaching infrastructure of a lot of former players who everyone's going to be able to look to whenever they're in a bind or in a bad spot or, like, slumping. Because the big thing last year with the Mets was that Quattlebaum came in as the hitting coach kind of unexpectedly after a lot of these guys had relationships with Chili Davis. And he was never really hired to ever work with the Major League staff. Like, his role was player development. So he didn't really have that much prior knowledge of these guys in the Major League team. I'm sure he had some, much more than the average person. I'm sure, like, based on hitting philosophy, he's going to make an impact in this organization. But he doesn't have the same acumen on the field that Eric Chavez does. And I think that is going to be important. Also, there's a funny quote just in December when Chavez was interviewing with the Yankees. Aaron Boone afterwards said that in a lot of ways, he blew me away. He's got a really good perspective of the game. He's very open-minded. And I was just thinking, like, what do you have to do to blow Aaron Boone away? Like, do you have to walk and chew gum at the same time? Like, what kind of obscenities do you have to say to make Aaron Boone, like, think, oh, my God, this is the guy? Like, how, like, Brett Gardner blows Aaron Boone away 3 times a week. Like, that was the one thing that kind of took away the Chavez shine from me, but we'll take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, no, I think that was more so lip service and trying to just, give the news a little bit of a soundbite there, because I can't. A hitting coach blowing someone away feels kind of like almost just hyperbole in a sense.
Right, and assistant hitting coach at the time. He would have been the Yankees' assistant to the hitting coach. They have a hitting coach. So we gave him an automatic promotion off the bat, bang, without ever seeing him in a major league dugout ever, because he was a special assistant to the general manager. He was more in a front office role, and then he was on a minor league bench, which, take that as you will, I don't get it. It's really bizarre that he kind of left the Bees and the Angels organization and hasn't done anything for 3 years. And it's kind of, in retrospect, kind of cool looking back, because he got a nice 1.5 years off before COVID, and he's had COVID to relax, and now he's ready to get back into his craft. And it just seems he was a hot commodity, and I'm happy we have him in a leadership role.
To be fair, I think part of that was he's a big Epler guy. Him and Billy, real close,
really?
real tight.
Okay.
That's like his kind of guy. And apparently there's just not a lot of freedom over there in the Angels organization during that time. So it was more so of like, let me get out of here because this is a bad scenario that it's currently in. Let me go somewhere else. Let me take some time off. And it ended up being probably a good decision for him. He went from being an interim AAA manager to the hitting coach of the New York Mets.
And truly, he kind of like went in hyperdrive for like the hiring process, because he got a promotion in a month.
Yeah.
Like who gets a job and gets promoted in a month?
Yeah, usually
you got
with
a
the
new
Mets,
title, a raise.
Usually with the Mets, we're used to the firing within a month, not the hiring within a month.
No. That's true. 2 straight off seasons. So one of these guys is not going to make it to the season with the team. I don't know who it's going to be.
Who's it going to be?
Oh God, we'll do a poll later. But then the one role the Mets still have to fill, which is like that transition, is the bench coach. And they've been blocked this week from a few young, sharp-minded bench coaches. Ryan Flaherty with the Padres, who Showalter was like, that was like his right-hand man apparently with those Orioles teams, and Andrew Bailey with the Giants, who like, I mean, the fact that you're going to be going from like a pitching coach to a bench coach says wonders about what Andrew Bailey's baseball mind is like.
I was just about to ask that. Andrew Bailey, that is the rookie of the year reliever, right? With the A's, Andrew Bailey, who just kind of fell off a cliff, I believe.
Yeah, and then did he get traded to the Red Sox and the arm was never the same, something like that?
Yeah, something along those lines. Like, he literally had like that 1 year, and then that was kind of it, but he was great. And I saw him last year with the Giants as a pitching coach. I went, oh, Andrew Bailey. That's a young guy. Like, he's like 34 or 35, I think. Makes sense we got denied him. If you're a smart organization, you want him around.
Definitely. And he's actually only 37. He's a South Jersey guy. He grew up a Mets fan. This would have been something that would have been an important job for him.
That would have been cool. And then Ryan Flaherty, when you say that, he was Buck Showalter's right-hand man when he was with the Orioles. I couldn't have picked a more perfect player for Buck Showalter to love. Ryan Flaherty is just so insignificant as a player. It's unbelievable. But as a coach, as a bench guy, I'm sure he'd be great.
Oh, fantastic. And he has been credited with a lot of doing whatever he can to take the Padres into the future over the last few years, as much as Jace Tingler would have resented that notion. But I think it is a good thing that the Mets are looking at young, cutting-edge guys in their 30s to stand next to Buck Showalter and be on this bench. It shows that everyone's very open-minded. The things that we were concerned about with Buck are probably unfounded, and that there's a good chance that we do end up having one of the most cerebral and knowledgeable and active coaching staffs in all of baseball, especially National League East.
Did you see Andy Martino's tweet from yesterday or 2 days ago?
No.
It is laugh out loud funny, and it's about the bench coach thing. Let me pull it up for you here real quick and read it out to you, because it's, we like to clown on Andy Martino, and for good reason. I mean, he is a clown. It's incredible that he gets paid money. But this tweet is the perfect example of why everyone rags on Andy Martino. And here it is. Where is it?
It's been a while since we took a shot at Andy.
The Mets have honed in on a bench coach. I don't have the name, but they'll wait to announce the entire staff at once after selecting their assistant pitching / bullpen coach and assistant hitting coach. But yeah, bench coach seems set. And he goes, don't spend your day speculating. I don't plan on it. Eric Chávez is almost certainly the highest profile name on the staff. So, there is a little insight there, but also this dude literally says they have a guy. I don't know who it is. I don't have a name. I have no clue. But I'm hearing they have a guy. It's like the classic, I know of a guy who knows of a guy. It's like he's such a shaky reporter. It's unbelievable.
No, my girlfriend's really real. She just goes to a different school.
Yeah, Manti Te'o.
Yeah, she lives in Canada. I can't see her. You know about my dad's immigration issues.
Yeah, it's just a ridiculous tweet. Andy Martino, he's keeping it up strong. Good to see that in 2022.
Yeah. Also, just in terms of the Andy Martino and the way this bench coach search is being portrayed now in the media, there's nothing to talk about. It's dry out there. Ken Rosenthal's written 2 articles about the Mets failing to hire a bench coach. A lot of people have been tweeting about permission being blocked. This isn't like the general manager thing being blocked. This is now we're after the new year. Generally, if it was as normal, we'd be 3 weeks away from pitchers and catchers. You would be a stone cold fool to allow a coach on your major league staff right now to go coach on someone else's major league staff. You are ramping up, theoretically. Everyone still has to be planning as if we're going to have a normal ramp up. I know we're not going to, which that's kind of sad, but you can't let a guy go at this point in the game. The Mets are probably going to have to hire someone who's not on the staff right now, or someone who's well below the pecking order, who the team would just feel really bad about denying for a role.
Yeah, because if you're the Giants, you're not trying to find a new pitching coach right now.
I couldn't even imagine the Giants trying to find a new pitching coach right now. They're in the doorstep of a World Series. They're going to let the guy walk out the door? No way.
It's absolutely nuts. And of course, the media running wild with it, as they do with anything New York Mets related. And then in terms of news, there isn't too much else here. There's been some rumors and stuff, and we asked you guys to, send us questions on Twitter and all our social media. We got a few. The 2 most popular are going to be about Brandon Nimmo switching to Scott Boras as his agent, which is huge news on a free agent season coming up here for Nimmo. And then about the DH possibility, because the Mets could be after some guys on the market. Kyle Schwarber's name has been thrown around a little bit. We'll get more in depth into that, but let's talk about Nimmo and Scott Boras first, because I think that's probably the most interesting one really right now with the Mets, because that is a legitimate concern. We had been talking about how we want Nimmo to sign, this team-friendly extension. Oh, it's gone. It's out the window. It's not happening.
Concern is not the word. There's an unmitigated disaster for the Mets that Brandon Nimmo just went with Scott Boras. You guarantee that we're not getting an extension now off the bat.
0% chance.
No extension. Not happening. You signed Scott Boras because you don't want an extension. The policy is no extensions. We test the open market. So that's out of the question. Gonzo, done deal.
That being said, though, I will say that Scott Boras and the Mets seem to have a pretty good relationship now with that Max Scherzer thing. When you sign a 37, 38-year-old pitcher to the biggest contract, I feel like that's at least a little bit of a closer bridge than there once was with Mets and Boras.
I don't want to say good relationship. I would say finding your opportunities where they are presented. Scott Boras is very aware of who the richest man in baseball is. And if I was Scott Boras, I would do anything I could to cozy up to, again, the richest man in all of baseball. There's no reason for Scott Boras not to, for his own sake and his own business, to do as well as possible, not to have as good of a relationship as humanly possible with the guy with $14 billion over here who's trying to win a World Series in the next 2 to 4 years. That just makes sense. And the way that Nimmo switching to Boras, it kind of leads me to believe that maybe there was some type of a failed negotiation or something wasn't going the way he wanted it to be going. You know what I mean? You switch to Scott Boras when you kind of want to become a killer. You don't hire Scott Boras if you want to be an easygoing guy like Nimmo. You want to smile, you want to hang out. That's not what Scott Boras' the agency does. You extract every single dollar of value out of your production until the end of time. So this kind of leads me to believe that there probably was some kind of, I don't want to say fracture, but probably some type of at least crack in what was going on with Nimmo and the Mets to make him go to Boras at this stage.
Yeah, and I think, he was with CAA too, so it's not like he was with one of the, a little guy either. He was with one of the three biggest agencies in baseball right now. So I think it's more so, I don't think it speaks more to the Nimmo-Mets relationship, but more so to Nimmo wanting the most money, and he probably felt like his agency was looking to get too much of a discount, I'm guessing, or not trying hard enough to get him the most money. I think that's more so what it is, and Nimmo's on the Mets too. He just saw Max Scherzer sign for $40 million. I'm sure he's like, wait, I'm really good, and I'm hearing more and more people talk about how I'm one of the best leadoff hitters in baseball, around the league. I should get paid. I should get big money. I played center field great last year. There's no reason I shouldn't be getting the money Starling Marte just got at the absolute minimum.
Definitely. When you look at Nimmo's arbitration numbers in terms of other players with similar, I don't want to say production because Nimmo has not been on the field for that kind of production, but similar rate stats. He only made $2.1 million his first year of arb, and last year 4.7. This year he's projected somewhere between 5.8 and 6.3, but that aren't really the types of numbers that you would think for a guy who is as well respected among smart baseball circles as Brandon Nimmo. And I think that he's a guy who can literally have 1 year where he plays even 130 games this season, probably 50 of them in center field at a reasonable, with reasonable defense to boot, and he could be a guy who signs a $100 million contract. I'm not even kidding about that. This almost guarantees that Brandon Nimmo is going to play his last year with the Mets if he plays well.
Yeah.
Nimmo's either going to have a good year and leave or have another Nimmo year, and then we'll see.
Yeah, and like you said, him playing center field is huge too, because we know the center field market is always so hard to come by. And not that I'm sure he's pissed that he's playing the corner with the Mets. I don't think that's a problem, but he definitely knows that if he markets himself as a center fielder or teams go after him as a center fielder, it's going to be hard to beat what you can get out of Brandon Nimmo right now.
And I think that ship has already sailed because Brandon Nimmo's already put one good year of center field defense, both numbers-wise and eye test-wise, out there in the world right now. It's kind of like when a quarterback has a few good games and then they immediately get that massive contract. Think about Matt Flynn.
Brock Osweiler.
Matt Flynn, Chase Daniel.
Yeah.
Matt Flynn threw 400 yards in one game and signed a $30 million contract or 40 or 50 or whatever it was. Just because you saw him play quarterback good one time. Nimmo can play no center field this year, and you can go into free agency next year as someone who's 30 and say, I have 2 good years of center field in me. You have to pay me for 2 good years of center field because that's what I can do, and I know you need that because almost every team in baseball needs a center fielder all the time.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to make Nimmo, if we are going to bring him back, just a little bit more expensive.
No more cheap discounts. There's no more secret about how good Brandon Nimmo is when Scott Boras signs him as a client.
No, that's officially put his name on the map. And then in terms of some other free agency stuff here, the potential DH question came up because that's always going to be talked about here at the new CBA. Whether or not there will be a DH, that's still up in the air, but there are some options that the Mets have internally that make sense. And then there are also some options that have been thrown around on the market, like Kyle Schwarber, who would also be good players, but do they fit?
Nelson Cruz, too. I've heard Nelson Cruz's name way more than I ever thought possible with the Mets. And I don't know. I wrote a lot of notes about this because I don't really like the discourse going on with the Mets DH right now. I just think the entire conversation is completely flawed because, first of all, you mentioned it. There's literally no guarantee whatsoever that there's going to be a National League DH in the new CBA. And we're kind of at the point right now where if I were a betting man, betting was legalized in New York last week. Mark and I had a fun day of gambling.
January 8th.
January 8th, gambling day for all New Yorkers. We're going to celebrate it every year, so everyone be aware of that. But if I were to place a bet right now on whether there will be a DH in National League next year or not, I would probably lean no.
Interesting.
As crazy as that might sound and how different that is from most of the things that we've seen otherwise, just because I can't really see, obviously, who benefits more between the players and the owners from there being a National League DH.
See, I think it's more so of a piece that they can both agree on and help lead them to getting more compromise because I think they both want the DH. I think players and owners want DH. So why would they not just agree to that?
Because then you're giving up power in the power struggle because someone has to say first that they want the DH. We can't be 1, 2, 3, DH. That's not how it works. These two groups are going to have to come to the table with something. And it's not likely that there's going to be such a joyous negotiation. Oh, DH, throw it in. Yeah. We both like it. Both people want it to a certain degree, but not enough to make any concessions for it. The owners, I heard this argument from Eno Saris on Twitter the other day, kind of was a brain blast for me, but they probably want this more because they have so much money invested in pitchers, and there's so many few pitchers. You lose a pitcher, and your season could be over if it's the wrong pitcher. We saw it with the Mets last year with Jacob deGrom. And Jacob deGrom arguably could have gotten hurt swinging a bat. Zach Gallen last year got hurt swinging a bat. We've seen Masahiro Tanaka get hurt on the base pads. You almost want those guys not on the base pads or at the plate as much as possible. Even more so than what the players union could gain from there being a full-time, like a universal DH, just because you get a couple extra jobs that aren't really that valuable. Like, how much is a player who can't really play the field signed for in modern baseball? It's not that much. It's really just Nelson Cruz. And his market the last few years has been suppressed, even though he's been literally one of the best hitters in baseball.
Do you feel that, though, opening up the DH to the National League and, 15 more teams, it almost makes the DH a more coveted position? So wouldn't there be more value in guys that are actually good at it, though?
The thing is, that is kind of also flawed logic, because to be a good DH means you have to be really bad at something else. And we've seen kind of the smartest teams in baseball in the American League have more success when that DH is more of a revolving door than someone who stands there every day. Like David Ortiz, the player everybody talks about, and that was all good and well. But he, was a Hall of Fame type of bat. Like, those hitters like David Ortiz don't come around every couple of years or so. That's like a once every 15, 10, 20 years for a team type of deal. And also, that kind of just like complicates the rest of your roster, because when you have that position locked in, now everyone else has to be locked in. We've seen the Yankees get into trouble over the last few years by Giancarlo Stanton being locked into that DH spot. And we've seen teams like the Rays and the Red Sox do everything in their power to keep that open, especially the Dodgers in the shortened season when the National League did have a DH. It seems like there's just more to gain when that position is something that revolves, as long as you don't have the elite bat. And Cruz and Schwarber do profile as the elite bats that could make the stable DH worth it, but just not for the Mets roster as it's currently constructed.
Yeah, the way it's currently constructed, it would be a little bit of a too many cooks situation. There would be a lot of guys who can all do the same thing right now, and that is really the main reason why I think Schwarber and Cruz don't make sense. But like in a vacuum, I guess you're saying, starting nine, you're playing your 9 best players. Schwarber and Nelson Cruz are by far better options than anybody that the Mets could currently put at DH.
Clearly, like last year, the Rays, Nelson Cruz made a shit ton of sense for them, even though it went against their long-standing philosophy of rotating the DH. Until Cruz came to the Rays last year, they had 8 different guys in the DH spot at some point during the season. It was guys from Yoshi Testugo to Austin Meadows, who had it most of the time. Brandon Lau did it a few times here and there. They just liked G-Man Choi did here and there. They just liked having that Yandy Diaz, of course. They liked having that DH spot open. So whenever you had the right matchup, or whenever some guy had like a barking hamstring or a sore wrist, you can give the guy a day off. You don't take anything off from the rest of your team. You make sure everything still runs as it's supposed to run. So the Giants, without a DH, kind of do this really well last year, where you mix and match every single day. You avoid injuries. You keep the load off of the older guys who mean more for your team at the plate, and everything works really well. But the Rays just had so much depth and such good defense at so many different positions that they were able to take on a DH last year, and it was able to improve their bottom line because Cruz is that good of a hitter. And again, the Rays had like 4 guys in their roster who could either play shortstop or center field. Like, the Mets just don't have that luxury. The Mets currently right now have 3 full-time DHs on their team between Robinson Cano, J.D. Davis, and Dominic Smith. I can't even imagine how bringing on a 4th would help this team play. Like, there's no one who can play center field, or not enough guys who can play center field and shortstop on this roster.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to get lost too. Like you're saying, like there's not a world where they help the team. Like, they definitely make the team better. I think that's like without a doubt, but it causes more issues as well.
I'll say that signing a guy like Cruz or Schwarber will make the Mets better on opening day, but there's no proof that it's going to make the team better on August 1st.
See, I don't know. I really do think that bringing in a guy like Kyle Schwarber would be huge for this offense. Like that left-handed power bat, and I know you're not saying it wouldn't be.
No, yeah. But I just think that if you want to bring in those guys, there still needs to be a lot of a churn done.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Let's say that you do sign Schwarber and there is a DH. So opening day, your outfield is Nimmo, Marte, Canha, Schwarber's DHing, Pete's at first, Jeff McNeil's at second, or Robinson Cano's at second. Or no, Jeff McNeil's at second, Francisco Lindor's at short, and Eduardo Escobar's at third. So what's your opening day bench then? Your bench is Robinson Cano, can't really do anything. Your bench is J.D. Davis, who also can't really do anything. Luis Guillorme, who can play defense everywhere, but we're not really sure if he can hit enough to be in the major leagues. A backup catcher, Tomas Nido, and then who's the 5th bench guy in that situation?
Who would be the 5th bench guy?
I don't even know. I'm blanking on Mets bench guys right now.
Didn't we get somebody that could be a bench guy?
Who are you looking at, the producer?
No, I'm just thinking. I'm looking out to the side, looking out the window here in sunny Texas.
Is Jamie over there? Like, Jamie, who's the Mets 5th bench guy?
What do we got over here? You got a name for me? Pull a little Mike Francesa. I don't know who we're talking about.
I'm pulling it up right now. It would be Oh, it'd be Dominic Smith, of course, the guy we just mentioned. So if you bring in Kyle Schwarber, he's a guy who can't really play defense. You now have 3 guys on your bench who can't play defense, backup catcher, and the one guy who can play defense can't really hit.
Yeah.
I just don't see how we get through a season without a lot of middle infield depth in the upper minors to where that roster spot is best used in that way. Like maybe if we didn't sign Mark Hanna, like it would have made a little bit more sense, or if Jeff McNeil gets traded, but we can't, in that situation also, you really can't afford to lose Jeff McNeil because he's another one of your only versatile players on the whole roster. Like it's not that these guys wouldn't obviously make the Mets lineup better. The Mets definitely need a lefty bat, and the Mets could definitely use one more hitter to send them from like a good offense to a great offense. But it seems like it'll just put the rest of this roster in a box that I don't really think it would benefit them to be in the long term. By long term, I mean like the entire season, not like years.
Yeah, and that does kind of go against what we've seen recently with like the guys the Mets have been going after where, you know, Eduardo Escobar can play 3 infield positions. Starling Marte plays all the outfield positions. Mark Canha can play all the outfield positions and a little first base too. Like they have the versatility. Kyle Schwarber is a good player. Nelson Cruz is a good player. And like you said, would definitely help on paper, but we also know that you need to be able to make fill-ins and have different guys step in. And I think you're definitely right in that it would be just a little too many cooks in the kitchen. And we could go and make the team better through other avenues rather than filling in our DH 100%.
Yeah, and it's not even about filling in other avenues with the money you'd save. Like money, we're not even talking about money anymore. But don't care. Don't give a fuck. You've 26 roster spots here, and you have to make sure those are maximized in a way that helps this team win on a daily basis. Again, like there are days that Kyle Schwarber and Nelson Cruz will be able to win you a game because they'll hit 2 home runs or they'll drive in 5 runs. They get a shit ton of hits. But like it's ironic, but the big thing that's kind of locking the Mets into this right now, besides those 3 guys who don't even have a clear defined role or any way to help this team, is the fact that they have an elite hitting first baseman. A lot of the times the teams like the Dodgers, the Giants, the Rays, last year the Red Sox, they were kind of able to use that first base position as half of a DH and be able to rotate their guys who couldn't play the field in there. Like if first base was open, Cano could play there a little bit, JD could play there a little bit, either Cruz or Schwarber could play there a little bit, because for some they were both playing that last year after they were traded to those 2 very smart teams who were run by very similar types of people. And I'm not saying it like at all in any way, shape, or mind that Pete Alonso shouldn't be on this team. Pete Alonso literally, he's one of the best hitters in baseball. I'm just saying like when you have a locked-in first baseman, it gives you less flexibility to sign these one-dimensional types of players. Like the Mets need athleticism, the Mets need defense more than they need power right now. And that doesn't play as well in podcasts or on Twitter or in videos or in articles, but it just makes more sense for this team to be as good as it can be, get more athletes who can do more things rather than a guy who could just sit in the bench and hit home runs.
Hey, listen, I mean, what did we have in our description of our podcast? We're going to give you like very sane takes. We're going to be calm. We're going to be collected. Yeah. We're going to give you, you know, the exciting thing is to say, let's sign Kyle Schwarber and Nelson Cruz. But the right move tells us there's other things we can do before that.
We could talk for 15 minutes about their career accolades, how many home runs they've hit, and their incredible plate discipline, the way they smash the ball, how much fun it is to see Kyle Schwarber hit home runs into the Coke corner now.
And we do lose like 15 home runs a year hit against us from Kyle Schwarber. So, you know.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem to just sign Kyle Schwarber and just not play him. Just put him in AAA. That would be a move. Give Kyle Schwarber $30 million not to play against the Mets, sure. And this conversation changes if the Mets find a way to get rid of 2 of the unforgivables right now.
Yeah. And
not saying that those guys can't be helpful in some way, but there's just nowhere that I can see that Cano, Davis, or Smith playing the field and hitting well on a regular basis. And ironically, Cano was one who could do it the most.
I was just about to say Cano's probably the guy that we're reluctant to move the most just because there's a world where he can play second base at a completely fine level again and also hit, where JD Davis is never going to be able to play the field and Dom Smith is only a first baseman and he hasn't hit. So like those 2 guys are really the thing that are clogging up this roster right now.
And those 2 guys are the ones that more easily be traded because they don't make any money. Like you can probably trade Smith and JD for like fine minor league players with like some potential, or maybe even like a 17-year-old with a massive amount of potential. And it probably, in a backwards way, helps this major league team out more because you suddenly get flexibility.
I was just about to say, like, do you think that the Mets should move Do you think that the Mets should move Dom and JD just to free up some flexibility, just to have the opportunity to bring in a different kind of player? Because, like, I mean, we have to keep harping on it, but, like, they just don't really make sense right now unless there is the DH and then you're going to platoon those guys. But even then, if you're going to do that, why would you not just go get Kyle Schwarber and get rid of these guys and improve somewhere else?
Exactly, especially because Kyle Schwarber can probably play the outfield better than any of those 3 guys I just mentioned. Like, truly, so And then you can kind of turn Mark Canha into but then then you just gave Mark Canha $13 million to not play every day, which is a little bit obscure. But like, I do think that if this was my team, if I was running it, I would be running to at least get one of these guys, if not both of them, off my roster for the best minor league pieces I could get. And then you pivot that to sign guys who can play multiple positions and give you multiple things. Like, you could sign Brad Miller for free. And Brad Miller is a lefty with power who can play first and second to a degree. Like Donovan Solano, he has decent power. He can play second base some days for you in third base and do something that's okay. Like, even to bring a guy like Jonathan Villar back on this roster and to play multiple positions and give you something else you don't have. It's just, I'm craving with this Mets roster right now, this idea of flexibility that you see the best teams in baseball have. Some of the best, and I know that Ben Zausmer believes this too, because people internally at the Dodgers are the first ones who were like, we need everyone on our bench to play everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you have to play shortstop, center field, third base, second base if you want to have a bench spot here. And there are guys out there who can still do that. One of them who comes to mind is Trevor Story. You're giving up a pick to do that, and that's probably not going to happen. But I think if you were to make a splash as the Mets, it shouldn't be an obvious DH. It should be a guy who does more things.
Yeah.
Like, if Trevor Story wants to be Marcus Semien, like, that makes more sense to me than Schwarber, besides for losing the draft pick.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's probably the biggest narrative to take out of this is it's crowded for that position. And currently how the roster stands, it makes it a little bit tougher. But this is also stuff that's not going to happen for a couple months because we don't have any baseball.
And it's the other reason why I even feel stupid about like diving that much into like free agency discussions, because I don't even know when a free agent's going to be legal to sign.
No clue. I think they're meeting today, right? Or tomorrow,
Thursday.
I think.
So today when you guys are listening, probably.
Yeah. And there's still so much left before we actually get any sort of baseball coming back here. I guess to wrap up this episode, since it's pretty much it to talk about, we had a couple questions come in, right, from viewers.
Yeah, a couple. I mean, we got a few here and there, and we both basically answered them in those two segments. But our guy, Nick Kowal, who's like one of the most loyal Messed Up listeners out there, shout out Nick, he responds to everything. He's a homie. He asked us two funny questions along with that DH one. He asked, what were our favorite musical artists? So, Mark, who are some of your favorite musical artists?
I mean, all time to be boring and annoying. I know you're going to have some cool hip takes with guys that you like, but Eminem's a classic. That's like my favorite rapper of all time. Like rock bands, I love Linkin Park. They were great. That was like great for me in the 2000s. I know we make fun of Ernie for it. I won't put it on at a party now because that's just not the vibe at all, but I do love Linkin Park. I like the Beatles too. Let's be boring and pick some really cliche bands, but they're just classic. I love them. Right now, guys that I really like, ooh, that's tough. I really like MGK's new pop punk album that I did like a couple years ago. That to me was awesome. I think it's underrated. That's one of the things I'm listening to a lot right now. And Oliver Tree, I like him a lot too.
Yeah, Oliver Tree's a homie. I love Oliver Tree. Living with You kind of make me like Oliver Tree more. I just liked him like a little bit, and then I started listening to him like, oh, this guy's a lot of fun. I've always loved Kanye. Whatever you think Kanye is as a person, I will always listen to his music because it's really good. And some other like weirdo bands that I kind of like. I love a band called Jungle. If anybody likes happy music, they're super happy. Sing a lot. Toro Imoy, he's a homie. Plays great music. Fucking awesome. Also, again, just to be like stupid and annoying, I like the Talking Heads. Talking Heads are funny. They're fun. Psycho Killer. Always Sunny. It's always a good one. And then Nick asked us one more question. You talked about Ernie before in Linkin Park. He asked us if this Ernie Jonathan Villar thing is just a bit or if he really actually loves him. No, Nick, this is not a bit. Our friend Ernie, subtape subtape on Twitter?
Yeah,
subtape underscore. Subtape underscore.
Subtape underscore, yeah.
Subtape underscore. He loves Jonathan Villar. He's been his favorite player for his entire life. He loves him to bits and pieces. He wants nothing more than to watch Jonathan Villar play. He loved him so much he bought a customized Jonathan Villar Mets jersey.
And like any of the sorrow he shows is just for content for us, but he really does love the guy.
He's doing the bit. He is the one trying to be like hard to get. This is so funny. La la la. No, but he customized Jonathan Villar Mets jersey. You don't do that unless you're committed.
I've seen one Jonathan Villar Mets jersey in my life, and it's been worn by Ernie at subtape underscore. Make sure you guys tweet him. Let him know that we talked about him in this episode. I know he'll really appreciate it.
And ask him for a picture of the Jonathan Villar jersey because I know he still has it because of how much he loves him.
Yeah, of course. I'm surprised it's not framed in his room.
It probably is. We should get it signed for him and get it like shadow box.
That would be amazing. That would be so great. And then you had that like just a little fun tidbit Tim Britton article where he posed a question that is just kind of laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, we give Tim Britton a lot of props on this podcast. He's in the big three of Mets beat writers that we trust with Disha Thosar and Anthony DiComo. Is there a fourth one that we had there a little bit or no?
I don't think we've really acquired a fourth yet.
I I think there might have been, but I think we'll keep that off for now. It's definitely not Healy or Barron or Eddie Martino.
No.
So if there's anyone else that maybe we're just forgetting about, then I apologize. But he posted a nice long survey yesterday about how Mets fans are feeling going into this offseason, because it's a lockout for everybody out there making baseball content. We need some shit to talk about. And he posed one question about the 2021 season that I just found the multiple choice options to be really hysterical. And it was, how would you describe your level of disappointment you felt about the 2021 Mets? And the 4 options were, it was the most disappointing season in Mets history, which I hope no one picked that, because it wasn't the most disappointing season in Mets history.
Be crazy.
It was as disappointing a recent season that the Mets have had. I picked that one. I think that was possible because it was as disappointing as a recent season. Because the last 7 years have been disappointing in their own ways, but this one was particularly disappointing for unique ways. And this one describes Mets fans. It's sad to read. It's going to be sad to say. And it was no more disappointing than a usual season.
Which is so crazy that a usual season is disappointing.
Than a usual season. This was no more disappointing than usual season. A usual season. This is the first time in the history of Major League Baseball that a team who was, I think it was like 5 games in first place at June 1st was 5 games out of the first place by like September 1st, something stupid like that. As disappointing as usual season. That one is probably going to end up winning because it kind of makes sense.
That one's hilarious. That's the best option, I think. That's the funniest option. And as Mets fans, we know it all too well.
Yep, know it all too well. But
good episode.
Yeah,
good episode. A little bit shorter, but we're still right around that 45, 50-minute mark because that's how we always do it. Thank you guys for listening to Mets'd Up episode number 70. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Drop us a 5-star rating. We're looking for those still. And drop us some reviews. Drop us some questions in the reviews too. We'll shout you out at the end of the next episode if you have any for us. Make sure you watch Once Upon a Time in Queens. It might be the next episode if there's no new news. If there is... it'll be the one after that. Who knows? It's just kind of a rainy day. We're taking a rain check on that right now, but definitely go watch that so we can talk about it. You guys can get involved as well. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Mets'd Up. YouTube channel, Mets'd Up Podcast. We're going to have the video up there as well. If you guys want to see a video version of it, follow James on Twitter, at Jeter Had No Range. Follow me, at GiraffeNickMark with a C. And that's where we're going to wrap up episode number 70, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out, guys. Thanks for listening.